Welcome back. This is the final piece of the puzzle. We're doing one last painting of winter trees called Winter Thaw. In this prologue, I want to just talk a little bit about the big picture and some of the things that go into making the big picture. From experience, we know that in life, we encounter problems all the time, and we get caught up in the small problems very easily. And the same is true in painting. We get caught up in small areas that are sometimes actually irrelevant to the whole painting, and we get stuck with those. And a solution to that is to think about the big picture and the elements that are going into the big picture and actually what you want to say through your painting. This is a big part of it. For me, at least, painting is primary function is communication. I want to reach other people and have them feel the same sensations that I feel. It's just that the language is different. It's got its own idiom, and we build our communication or what we want to see through visual means. And understanding what you want to say, asking that question before you set out on a painting is a good practice. In today's painting, I gave the title Winter Thaw, and in this painting we'll still see some vestiges of winter, but we also notice that there's a thaw going on in the foreground in the sidewalk area. It's just a small piece of the painting. In fact, if you remove that, you feel like you're in the deep of winter, but this little area that's reflecting the sky where the snow is melting gives us, or gave me, the idea that spring is coming, snow is melting, and the sun is shining. So I'm starting to already think about the spring season in this painting. Many things go into the painting, but to avoid getting caught up in small details, it's a good idea to step back from your painting quite often and see how the larger components are working. It's not a bad idea to do this value study, which simplifies some of those parts of the painting into lights and darks, so that you can perhaps find or see how different parts are working together, or sometimes conflicting each other. In one sense, this tonal study has revealed to me that I made a miscalculation with the darkness of the snow that's in the foreground. Because it's in shadow, it's actually quite dark, and I'm going to return at the end of the painting and paint another layer onto that snow area so that it feels as it's in shadow. I structure the trees so that there's a pathway of light, and there's a nice convergence of lines right where I'm going to be placing my figures. And these things combine to give us a center of interest. The periphery is important. The sky, the trees, the distant sun, the snowbanks, they're all important. They all contribute. But they're all kind of, in my mind, controlled or guided by this center of interest, which is the two figures having a conversation and a bright light hitting off of the reflections in the snow. Sometimes it's not so obvious, where to place your center of interest. But if you ask the question of yourself before you're painting, what do I want to say in this painting, and where can I really say that with some clarity, some obvious manner? The answer usually reveals itself. If you struggle to find that, it doesn't mean that the painting is not worth doing. Certainly it's worth doing. It's just you need to get into the habit, or it's helpful to be in the habit of thinking about that before you start off on a painting. So the tonal study is finished, and I'm going to move now into the color version. As I said, I learned some things in the tonal study. It helped me to warm up. I'm approaching it in many of the same sequences. In this case, you see me using a very intense cad yellow against that little white area. I identified that as where the sun is kind of breaking over the trees. And so I'm using the white of the paper there. And I'm measuring the strength of my yellow, the strength of these oranges against that white area. I prepared this guy with a really loose painting of cad yellow and cad orange, done on dry paper, but the surface is pretty wet right now. And you see me using another color that might be new to you. It's called lavender. Lavender is made by Holbein. It has a little opacity and a strong blue color. Works well for these sorts of clouds that I'm painting now. It helps to give a kind of light cloud that shows the sunlight breaking through it, and it doesn't move too much when I put it on the paper. This is because there's a little bit of white mixed with it. Still very transparent though. After creating the clouds to my satisfaction, I'm moving on to the lower section, and I'm starting with a sort of light orangish color. It might be hard to see in this video, but there's a light orange there, and I'm going to follow that with a deep ultramarine blue. We've had on several occasions our snow turn green, and this is usually because the warm color that you proceed with is a little too strong. The orange or the yellow one that you put under the snow is a little too strong, and the blue that follows simply turns that green. We want to keep ideally a bright blue to this section, a strong blue, dark blue. So go lightly with that first application. You see me working to identify the shape of that sidewalk, and it's related to the break in the clouds. They kind of line up and one flows from the other. And this is pretty close to what we saw in the photograph. So you might say, well, he's just copying what he found in the photograph. Actually, no, I'm taking a few liberties. I'm making it a little more dramatic and intensifying the snow. I've kind of I'm going to play down the distant trees, but I'm going to play up the snow. So I'm taking a few liberties. The composition is strong in the photograph, so there's no reason to really alter the composition too much in the painting. But I am taking some liberties with color and brush strokes. Brush strokes are some of my favorite things. So I'm proceeding now to the back trees, and I'm starting with sort of a light application of, it's almost water with just a little bit of orange. The reason is I want to get a real soft edge against that white. And this is to evoke the feeling that light is kind of bursting over the tops of the trees and concentrated behind the trees, making these trees appear to glow with light from behind. I follow that light wash with some strong burnt sienna, and you see the brush strokes, very calligraphic. The working thought here is trees and the tops of trees. I'm leaving a lot of the burnt sienna because I want it to glow. I want that glow to remain. So you see, as I place the ultramarine blue on top of this burnt sienna, I'm careful not to cover everything, especially along the tops. As it comes down into the snow is dried here, and I can create some hint of grasses or other pathways or suggest all sorts of things. And I continue to build the trees outward, adding more ultramarine blue, concentrating that area of light just above the trees in the middle of the painting. The strokes you see me making now are basically extending that ultramarine color up into the sky and they are meant to represent the tops of trees. So I'm giving them a definite shape, but they're very broken strokes. The reason for that is we're painting trees without foliage, but very fine branches. Just a beautiful subject that winter offers us. And I'm looking for the right stroke to do that, and I'm settling on some weak dry brush in the sky to do that. I'm kind of admiring my painting right now because I love the way the sky has dried. You see how that lavender has settled in and allows that yellow to glow through it. I'm admiring it now because I'm going to be covering it up, sadly, with trees and branches and that sort of thing. These strokes you see me making now are, again, using that same combination of burnt sienna and a little bit of ultramarine blue to break up the reflected area, that pure white in the sidewalk, and give us an idea of some mud being exposed on the side, definitely some puddles which will be reflecting the yellow of the sky, and also some lines. These edges are creating lines which converge toward the back and are very strong indicators where the center of interest is to be found. They really pull you towards the center of interest, almost like arrows. I'm enjoying myself immensely now with these dry brush strokes. I enjoy painting them this way, the tops of the trees. The technique is I kind of load the brush with color, in this case a mixture of thicker burnt sienna and thicker ultramarine blue. And I paint the foundation of the stroke pretty thick, and as I move it upward, the paint has left the brush almost entirely, and I get this very dry, rough finish to the stroke, and I just love it for this subject. And so as I said, I'm enjoying this a lot. And I keep painting those strokes and keep painting those strokes, thinking about the shape of the tree and a natural feeling, of course, but I'm really trying to say a lot through these brush strokes. And some places you'll see there's darker deposits of color. Some place the branch almost disappears. Some edges were left in some of these bigger branches to carry this idea of light bouncing off the tree. And this part is where I improvise with strokes and try to communicate the sensation of dry branches moving into the sky, but with a little bit of flair, a little bit of excitement. That's how I want this painting to affect others, is I want them to not only see it as a specific time and to sort of understand the story or the narrative behind it, but also to enjoy it as a painting and kind of feel that this is not just a representation, but actually I can enjoy this the same way the painter enjoyed it, by means of those brush strokes. Finishing off some of those smaller branches, and with each touch, that area between the trees is growing stronger and the energy is being condensed. The upper part of the sky now is getting more and more subdued and retreating more and more. All a part of the plan to push back against that sky and have a greater focus through the mid area of the painting, where we see the white of the paper, we see dry brush strokes, we see intense colors. Oh, look at that. Some of my figures are casting shadows already and they haven't even been painted. Surprise, surprise. Even to myself, I'm surprised. A few more trees, and now we move to the figures. Did you see that? It was just basically a blob, a squarish blob, followed by a leg or a stick. And there we have it, two figures. Shoulders hunched because it's still a little cold out there. Same color in both of them. No need to really get colorful in this part of the painting because they're silhouettes against a very bright background. And the color is almost the strongest dark in the painting. In fact, it is the strongest dark. And we're going to leave it as just that. What you notice now is an adjustment. I think I said earlier that this blue dried weaker than I thought it would, and I felt it was too weak for this painting. So I'm adding blue, and in the process, I'm getting a little bit of glow on the top of the snow as it moves towards the back. This is another benefit besides the concentration of dark through the middle part of the painting. I'm also getting that glow on the top of the snow. So this is nearing completion. We can actually see the finished painting evolving, and we're doing details at this point. But all these, the palette was muted in one sense to give us a stronger clarity in the midground. Some of the colors were lighter in the background than they were in reality, to give us a stronger read on the figures. The photograph too was taken at a moment when I felt the subject kind of composed itself. So from the beginning, this had an intention. The center of interest, composition is guided by that. The values and edges and colors are guided by that. All the elements of this visual language are, in one sense, guided by my intention, by my message. And I'm adjusting now to try and make it stronger, adding that last bit of yellow as a reflection, as a way to soften the back of the sky. And I'm going to put a few small touches of highlights onto the shoulders and heads to, again, carry that bright light that's coming from behind, making our figures seem a little more three-dimensional. Excuse me, talking for such a long period. Actually, I don't know what I'm doing now. I'm maybe just moving the brush to use up time. I don't know why I'm doing that. The painting is basically finished, and this last presentation has been about the center of interest and unity in the painting, making a unified statement. I step back often to kind of measure those darks, make sure they're working with the background, and pretty much everything is working to my satisfaction. Well, here it is. This is the finished piece, and the simplification has been made perhaps in the background trees, in the amount of branches has certainly been reduced. The strokes, I've tried to keep a tempo with the strokes to make it energetic and descriptive at the same time. And those are the qualities that I like in painting, and qualities that I think transmit energy in painting.